Just days ago, NASA appeared to be moving steadily toward the next major milestone in its Artemis program. Artemis II, the first crewed mission of the Space Launch System rocket, was being discussed in the context of an early spring launch window. The vehicle stood assembled at Kennedy Space Center. Recent fueling tests had restored confidence. Public messaging suggested forward momentum. Then, in a brief update, NASA indicated it might need to roll the entire rocket and spacecraft stack back to the vehicle assembly building. The reason was not weather. It was not a launch pad issue. It was a problem inside the upper stage propulsion system. At first glance, this may sound like another routine delay, but the details suggest something more structural about how this vehicle operates. So let's take a closer look. If you value clear, step-by-step breakdowns of complex space missions without speculation or hype, consider supporting the channel so you don't miss future analyses. The immediate issue centers on the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, commonly referred to as the ICPS. This is the upper stage of the Space Launch System in its current Block 1 configuration. During routine operations on the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, engineers detected an unexpected interruption in helium flow within this upper stage. Helium inside the ICPS is used to maintain proper pressure conditions in the propellant tanks and to purge the engines before ignition. According to NASA's update, the anomaly appeared during a repressurization procedure, not during an active countdown attempt. This detail matters because it indicates the system was not under full launch stress at the time. Engineering teams are currently reviewing data to determine the root cause. In parallel, crews have begun preparing the vehicle for a possible rollback to the Vehicle Assembly Building, often abbreviated as the VAB. A rollback would allow technicians full access to internal components that cannot be serviced on the launch pad. If the rollback proceeds, the previously targeted March launch window would almost certainly be missed, shifting focus to later opportunities. To understand why this helium issue matters, we first need to understand what the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage actually does. The ICPS is the upper stage of the current Block 1 version of the Space Launch System. An upper stage is the part of a rocket that operates after the core stage has completed its primary burn. Its job is to provide the precise velocity needed to place a spacecraft on its intended trajectory. In the case of Artemis II, that trajectory is not just low Earth orbit, but a path toward the Moon. The ICPS is derived from the Delta Cryogenic Second Stage, a system with previous flight heritage. It is powered by a single RL-10 engine. The RL-10 is a liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen engine designed for high efficiency in space. Efficiency in this context refers to how effectively the engine converts propellant into velocity, measured by specific impulse. Liquid hydrogen provides excellent performance in the vacuum of space, which is why it is commonly used in upper stages. But hydrogen introduces engineering complexity. Liquid hydrogen must be stored at extremely low temperatures, around minus 253 degrees Celsius. It is also the smallest molecule in the periodic table. Because of its size, it can leak through extremely small gaps in seals or valves. That means hydrogen systems require very tight tolerances and careful pressure management. This is where helium enters the picture. Helium is an inert gas, meaning it does not chemically react with the propellants. Inside the ICPS, helium performs two critical functions. First, it is used to purge the engine systems. Purging means flushing out unwanted gases or residual substances before ignition. Second, helium is used to pressurize the propellant tanks. Pressurization is necessary because as liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen are consumed by the engine, the volume inside the tank increases. Without added pressure, the tank could collapse or fail to feed propellant properly. Helium maintains stable internal pressure so that fuel flows smoothly to the engine. In the current situation, NASA observed that helium was not flowing through the system as expected during a repressurization procedure. Repressurization is a routine process used to restore proper tank pressure after certain operations. The anomaly did not occur during a full countdown, and the vehicle remains in a safe configuration. To maintain stable environmental conditions for the engines, NASA has switched to a ground-based environmental control system purge. This means that instead of relying solely on onboard helium, support systems on the ground are supplying the necessary purge capability while engineers investigate. Several potential causes are under review. One possibility involves the final filter between the ground systems and the flight vehicle. Another area of interest is the quick disconnect umbilical interface. A quick disconnect, often abbreviated as QD, is a connection point that allows fluids or gases to transfer between ground equipment and the rocket. These connections must detach cleanly at liftoff. If a QD interface malfunctions, it can interrupt flow. A third possibility is a failed onboard check valve. A check valve is designed to allow fluid to flow in one direction only. If it fails, it can block or restrict gas movement. A similar failure signature was observed during Artemis I, which is why this possibility is being closely examined. Regardless of the root cause, accessing internal components of the ICPS is not practical while the vehicle remains at the launch pad. The vehicle assembly building provides the necessary platforms and controlled environment for disassembly and repair. This is why rollback is not simply a scheduling choice. It is a logistical requirement if certain types of repairs are confirmed. At first glance, a helium flow issue in an upper stage may appear to be a narrow technical problem. But within the context of the Artemis program, it carries broader implications. Artemis II is planned to be the first crewed mission of the Space Launch System. Unlike Artemis I, which was uncrewed, this mission is designed to carry astronauts beyond low Earth orbit for the first time since the Apollo era. That distinction changes the risk calculus. Even minor anomalies are treated with heightened scrutiny because human lives are involved. There is also the question of flight experience. The Saturn V rocket during the Apollo program underwent multiple uncrewed test flights before carrying astronauts around the moon. Incremental testing in low Earth orbit built operational confidence step by step. In contrast, SLS has flown once. Artemis II would be its second flight and its first with crew. That does not mean the vehicle is unsafe. It does mean that each anomaly draws attention to the limited number of real-world flight data points available. The choice of hydrogen as a propellant also connects this event to longer-term architectural decisions. Hydrogen offers high performance, especially for upper stages performing deep space maneuvers, but it is demanding to manage. If recurring hydrogen or helium-related issues persist, they could influence discussions about future configurations, such as the planned exploration upper stage for later Artemis missions. There is also a strategic dimension. Artemis is not a single launch, but a sequence of missions intended to establish a sustained lunar presence. Delays in Artemis II do not simply shift one calendar date. If prolonged, they could affect downstream missions, integration schedules, and international partnerships tied to lunar surface objectives. However, the long-term impact depends on scale. If the root cause is isolated and corrected quickly, the broader program may remain largely unaffected. If the issue reveals deeper systemic vulnerabilities, then schedule and certification timelines could require adjustment. For now, the key point is that this is not only a launch pad story. It is part of how a new heavy lift system matures under operational conditions. At this stage, several important questions remain unanswered. NASA has not yet confirmed the precise source of the helium flow interruption. Engineers are still analyzing data to determine whether the anomaly originated in a ground interface component, a quick disconnect connection, or an internal valve within the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage. Until that diagnosis is complete, it is not possible to assess the scope of the required repair. Another uncertainty concerns timing. If a rollback to the vehicle assembly building proceeds, the previously targeted March launch window would almost certainly be missed. April launch opportunities remain technically available. However, that depends on how quickly the issue can be accessed, corrected, retested, and verified. There is also the broader certification pathway to consider. Artemis II represents the first crewed flight of SLS. Any anomaly discovered now will likely undergo extensive review before NASA authorizes launch. That process is not only about fixing hardware, but about validating that the fix addresses the root cause. In the coming weeks, several milestones will be worth watching. Confirmation of the failure source, a decision on rollback, updated launch window targets, and any additional system-level inspections that may follow. For now, the vehicle remains safe and stable. The outcome depends on what the data ultimately confirms. As this investigation unfolds and new technical findings are released, we will continue tracking the developments step by step.